what we learned? Well, we made a lot of mistakes. First of all, we messed up a lot, and this is as an organization. It was not that memorable. I mean, if I didn't put up that slide, you probably couldn't have told me what those were. You probably haven't seen this slide. That's kind of a problem. What we learned is that everyone needs to kind of buy into it. I mean, again, that delicate balance. And your manager needs to be talking about it, and your manager needs to be thinking about how your MPOs might relate to the strategy, or it's a nice document that you send to stakeholders, as I said before. And then we learned it has to be linked to resources, or it ain't going to happen. So if you did, one of the original pillars was innovation. Innovate. Well, that's a little too, and we loved it. And many strategic plans have innovate. But that was a little too broad. And there was no, at that time, really way to allocate in a responsible way resources around that. And so we've learned that resource allocation is really important. Now, there's been a lot of unbelievably positive things. I mean, we will have essentially double our impact in 5 years to our real audience, which is the people we serve. That's amazing. When we did this plan, we really didn't know if that was possible. That was an aggressive goal. So something on the order of 20 million people will have an extra year of healthy life because of PSI, and that's something we can all be proud of, and you're all making that happen. I don't care what your job is. Secondly, our diversification of donors has been just really unique in our industry. Most of our so-called competitors, I believe our real competition is what health impact we could be generating for our audience. That's our competition. But if you look at it in terms of people competing for money, most of them only go for USAID funds or U.S. government funds because they pay on time, they accept your cost structure as it is. It's basically, are these your costs? Yes. Okay, we'll pay that. And that's a very attractive model. And that's why all the for-profit organizations basically only work with the U.S. government. We have now diversified ourselves among many donors. The U.S. government is one, maybe a third of our funding, something like that. And that gives us strength so that we're not dependent on any one donor or the ups and downs of one government or fads or trends or somebody doesn't like us. We're not risking the whole organization. Family planning is back. PSI was founded around family planning. Helping women and families manage and control their health and lives. That's why we started, and it was fading. But now in these last 5 years, it's coming back thanks to some investments by large anonymous donor, thanks to your efforts. Family planning is now back on our radar. It's back on what we do. It's back in terms of something we're proud of and something to feel good about. So that's also been a dramatic change in the last 5 years. And probably the biggest change, in my opinion, at PSI over the last 5 years, is our posture to the outside world. 5 years ago, when we first did a strategic plan, we kind of went out and got some real consumer insight into the people who fund us or make decisions about that affect funding us. And we found out that, there's a lot of things they really didn't like about PSI. I mean, they funded us and they liked some elements of our work, but we weren't engaging. And we were too big not to be a partner in a bigger mission than just our mission. We're part of a health systems now. What we do influences the public sector. What we do influences other NGOs. And that has, from Carl Hoffman, a former ambassador, down to CRs and you guys, I think we've gone from kind of a fist to a handshake. And that's actually been quite difficult, because it takes time, and you go to meetings, and it's, for many of us, that's not our default mode. It's painful. And it's a huge investment, but we measure this, and we've made market progress in terms of external perceptions of PSI being constructively engaging and working in the context of the broader public health landscape, not just our little projects that we do really well. So that has been a massive change at PSI, and beginning with Carl, and but down throughout the organization. So actually, a lot of amazing things have happened over the last 5 years, in part because of the plan. And what we've learned is that when we agree something, and we think it's right, and you believe in it, and we invest in it, and we're consistent and rigorous about it, that just amazing things can happen. So that in our opinion, that's kind of what we learned over the last 5 years. And now we want to build off that. So, going forward, we need a goal. And right now we talk about our goal in terms of DALYs and CYPs. And that's good. And that probably will never, ever, 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 ever change, because we're very bottom line oriented and we want to measure what we do. And we feel good about those metrics. I mean, they're the best they are. We made a big conversion to DALYs over the last 5 years. In fact, we used to talk about person years of protection, but there were a lot of kind of flaws with that. So, but we think that there's something missing here. Because this is like PSI, like we say, okay, we're going to hit $30 million. Or in Pakistan, we're going to hit $2.5 million. Is that great? Well, I don't know. Because what we think is missing is, not the end of the slideshow, is our audience. We think it would add a lot to put our impact into the context of the people we serve. So is 2.5 million CYPs in Pakistan great? Well, I don't know. Let's look our audience and what percent of her need, of her burden, we're meeting. So, or with HIV, what percent of our audience's burden are we relieving? Now, this doesn't mean we walk away from that. That just assumes DALY and CYPs are counted. And now there's WHO data that gives you the broader burden data, thanks to Kim's team, the metrics team. So we can now look not just at what PSI is doing, which is great, and we're not going to stop counting that, but we think it would be a lot more informative to look at it as well in the context of the people we serve, and what percent of her needs are we meeting. I'm just looking at my notes because I'm speaking for a number of people, and I want to make sure I'm not missing major points. So, before I jump into the strategic kind of themes, this plan begins and ends with a person, and that person is the person we serve. And we decided to develop, or we're proposing, we use an archetype. And her name is Sarah. And Sarah could be anyone. Sarah could be obese. She could be wanting to not get pregnant. She could be an HIV positive. She could be a drug user who's just overdosed. She could be anyone that we serve. But we wanted to have an archetype, or to keep, it's really just an internal tool to keep us focused on what's most important, and that's our audience needs. And so we found this as a useful mechanism to kind of personalize and make us always be asking, but what does this mean for Sarah? Is this strategic?